Bristol Myers Squibb, Amgen Oncology, Genentech, Karyopharm Therapeutics, Oncopeptides, Adaptive Biotechnologies, and Takeda Oncology. So why did we choose this topic today? In previous surveys that we've sent out after newly diagnosed myeloma patient events, in almost every single survey, I think it has been a suggestion in every single survey that we have a discussion about how to become more educated and empowered patients from the very beginning of our care. In the United States, I feel like we have this doctor knows best culture or mentality, which isn't always wrong, but it's something that sometimes keeps us from exploring the best options and educating ourselves as individuals. Odds are that your myeloma journey will be a lot less complicated and a lot more productive if you are actively educating yourself in order to have insightful conversations with your healthcare team. For that reason, I've asked a panel of veteran myeloma coaches as well as 2 medical professional colleagues of mine to join us today to talk about what they wished they would have known when they were diagnosed and what they were glad they knew in the beginning of their myeloma journey. What questions did they ask their doctor? What conversations did they wish they would have had with their medical team, or were they glad that they had? We're going to find out today. Let me introduce them to you. So Robin's multiple myeloma was diagnosed in October 2017 when she had a fractured shoulder bone. Kyphoplasty was done in 2 places. I'm not going to share her whole myeloma story because she's going to do that with you today. But she does live in Bartlett, Illinois, about 30 miles west of Chicago. Her husband and her participate in an active local support group. Her children are grown and married and supportive, and they have 3 grandchildren. Although she is retired from local government management, she is active in professional groups and is a senior advisor to those in active service. She loves to travel, and at age 63, she knows she has a lot more living to do. Jim was diagnosed in June 2017 with smoldering myeloma and never expected to see his active status. He will also be sharing his eventful myeloma journey with us. The support from his spouse, Pat, and their 4 children lifted his spirits when needed, giving him a renewed hope and expectation of living a long life, which at diagnosis, he didn't know that he would have that long life. He truly enjoys helping other patients gain comfort in their trials, especially when facing the transition from smoldering to a stem cell transplant. He likes to say that this is just another journey in life, and he compares the journey to his sailing trips. Which is his second passion in life, is sailing. Some days we experience calm water and light breezes, and life is good. But only in strong winds and heavy seas do we learn who we are and what we're made of. Know that the storm will pass and you will move on. We also have Sherry with us today. In October 2011, blood work showed that Sherry's kidneys were failing. This led to the myeloma diagnosis at age 49. And she was shocked. She's also going to share her decade-long myeloma journey with us. Over the years, she began attending myeloma patients' seminars and events. She and her husband love interacting with other patients and caregivers. She wanted to help in her area, so in September 2017, she started her own myeloma support group in the Boise, Idaho area, and it's been a great experience. She believes that patients share a common bond and that the struggles are real, but as you help each other, share experiences and laugh a lot, it becomes easier. When she was first diagnosed, the prognosis was 3 to 5 years, 7 if one was lucky. But as we mentioned, this October will be 10 years for her. Her husband and 3 kids have given her support and motivated her to keep fighting. She has seen all 3 children graduate college, 1 get married, and she has 2 beautiful grandsons. She looks forward to many more years and hopes that she can help others do the same. So I'm going to turn the time now over to Robin, and Robin's going to share her story with you. Robin will then turn the time over to Jim, who will then transition the conversation to Sherry, and then we will open up the floor for a group discussion. So Robin, the time is now yours.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm Robin. I was 60 when I was diagnosed, which is about 10 years earlier than the average in this country. And I was flabbergasted. I was in total shock. My shoulder hurt. I thought it was because I wasn't doing a good job following in dance classes some of those turns. And so I went about 6 months with that pain. and went to an orthopedic doctor who was relatively young. I felt bad for him having to tell me I had cancer. That's not the kind of work he signed up for, and to send me to an oncologist. So I went, I had the bone biopsy right in the office right away. We knew that it was multiple myeloma. And so started with induction therapy. I had the traditional Velcade, Dex, Revlimid for weeks, leading up to the stem cell transplant. I did require a port, which, I thought was going to be a big deal. My veins by the weekly chemo were not holding up to be used well. And the port on my chest is, no big deal at all. But I had no idea. I was very frightened. So I did I had 2 vertebrae that needed to be shored up with bone cement. So I had kyphoplasty surgery. I'm pain-free in that regard. It was very successful. Again, I was afraid of general anesthesia even, let alone back surgery, and everything worked out very well. The stem cell transplant, I tell people it's it's not fun, but it's not painful. It's certainly, not pleasant, and you have to endure and get through it. I did lose my hair 3 years. Obviously, it's all back, maybe some more. So went through that. I'm in remission. I did a single transplant, not a tandem. I have Velcade monthly, and Velcade for me did not work well. Subcutaneous, that's, I know how most people receive it, but it caused large 4-inch size welts on my stomach. So it's given as an infusion, and it works great for me. So there are options even to the types of medicines that you're on about how you get it, or frequency, your dosages, and that's something to keep in mind. I generally feel very good. I have some bone pain, but at 63, I figure I'm going to have some maybe aches and pains anyway. I got active pretty quickly with a local support group, and of course we're now virtual, but that was very helpful. And I am a myeloma coach, and I think that's been really helpful to me. I'm an extrovert, so that makes it a little easier than for some folks. But being able to share the positives and the bright side, and that you will have a good quality of life, you will live longer than you think. Those kind of things I think are important for all of us to share. Things I was glad I knew. I had been encouraged to see a specialist from a woman who was about 5 months ahead of me on the journey. And so did that, and I get local treatment from an oncologist, hematologist, but I see the specialist annually. And if there's, a change in a larger issue, I would converse with her. I'm in the Chicago area, so my specialist is at Northwestern. I knew right away that I had very good insurance. So the financial impact was not really a consideration for me. I still feel badly for my former employer who pays the insurance. My first year was over $700,000 between the cost of Revlimid, other drugs, the stem cell transplant, hospitalizations. So there is a myeloma coach that is a specialist in the finances. So if that's a concern, please contact her. Wish I knew better. When I first found out about the diagnosis, I was literally given almost no information. I looked on the internet. I went to the Mayo Clinic site, which I thought was a safe, good site. And I think it is now at the time. And Mayo's more focused on patient services than information. The International Myeloma Foundation and HealthTree are more, based on information. I thought I had 6 to 18 months to live. That I would be very frail, that I would, lose height dramatically because of vertebrae, have all this bone pain. Not the case. It was really very outdated information. So there's better resources, like I mentioned, that can be used, and that's what I do. I didn't know really how to advocate for myself at the time. It kind of felt like, sheep being led. And so learned to do that pretty much on my own. And now with support from Myeloma Crowd and HealthTree, that's encouraged. In fact, the specialist had recommended I do a tandem transplant at 6 months. And studies had just come out that said that there was really no gain in progression-free survival with the second tandem. And so I rejected the idea. And she was fine with it. She said it's kind of a 50-50 call, and it was my call to make. And further studies and information seems to support the decision I made. But that nobody had shown me studies or asked me about it. They just said, you should have a second transplant. I didn't know to not take vitamin C when taking Velcade. I read that somewhere. There were a number of things like that because I did my own research, I did my own looking, I knew about, because no one was handing that information to me or presenting those options and that information to me. I travel, including internationally. I do a small amount of consulting work. I have a full, rich life. As Jim Sales and Sherry's active with volunteer groups, we all have a good quality of life. None of the three of us have an aggressive form of myeloma either, so that makes a difference. And just checking my notes. Obviously, with friends and family support, things are good. And I'll let Jim go next. You're on mute, Jim. Jim, you're on mute.
Okay, is that better? I didn't realize that. Thank you. Thank you, Robin. That was an excellent story for the folks. I got to make a correction. I gave Audrey a page that said I was diagnosed in 2017. It was actually 2015. So I'm now 6 years out. For those of you who are new to this and full of worry and anxiety and stress, eventually let it go. That's my best advice. So here's my background. I started out going to my PCP for just an annual checkup, and turned out I had really high platelet count. That's very unusual for myeloma. Most myeloma patients suffer from very low platelets, but I had a 734,000 platelets, and you should only have about 450 max. So I was encouraged to have a second test. The second test gave the same result, and I was encouraged to see a hematologist. They sent me to, they being the PCP's office, sent me to a cancer care center. And again, the doctor was good, but he was a generalist, and he eventually, after 2.5 months of running tests and subjecting me to all sorts of unpleasant things, finally came back. And one day he walked into the office after I pressed him and said, look, I need to know what's going on. This 2.5 months has been the worst time of my life, pretty much. The anxiety of not knowing what's going on is scarier than actually finding out what it is. And I see some people shaking their heads, yes. So he walked into the office, sat down, talked a little bit with my wife and myself. And then eventually he said, look, you have multiple myeloma. Had no idea what that was. He said, you're smoldering and you're 40%. No idea what he was talking about. And being the way I am, I said back, well, I heard two good things. I'm smoldering, that must be good. And I'm only 40%, not 90%, so that must be good. And he said, well, I'll send my nurse in if you'd like, and she can talk to you about a trial that we have going on with Revlimid. And that was the extent of the time that was spent with me, was less than 10 minutes. Short move forward, I was put in touch with a doctor at the James, part of Ohio State University. I live in Columbus, Ohio. So Ohio State University has a wonderful cancer center. I was put in touch with a fellow who is a specialist in myeloma. Highly urge everyone to talk to a specialist. The specialist was just a breath of fresh air for me. Spent an hour and a half with my wife and myself, really gave us better understanding of what was going on and what it meant and what my future might look like. I thought I was gonna have to sell my boat. What are we gonna do with the house? I mean, I figured I was dead in 2 years on the first go round. And I began to realize that this is just, as I told my wife, I said, it's a little bit like diabetes, and I have a lot of friends with diabetes. I said, a little bit like diabetes. If you ignore it, it's going to kill you. But if you take care of it and treat it, you can manage it, and you can live a long life. And that's how I see myeloma, very much like that. Again, as Robin said, I'm a standard risk, so I don't have any of the genetic issues going on. If you don't know what that is, you need to find out from your doctor, because there are genetic issues that can make you a higher risk. So the second doctor was just a breath of fresh air, a whole new awakening. He recommended a trial. I went into a trial with daratumumab as a smoldering patient. That's daratumumab is now, of course, approved and used quite often on myeloma. At that time, it was not approved. It was being tested on smoldering, and my doctor used the terms of potentially curative. So I signed up for it. After 8 cycles, 8 weeks for a 8-week period, it had some impact, but it didn't do what we thought it was going to do, and that was the end of my trial, only because I drew an arm that was only 8 weeks long. I just talked to somebody recently who drew the arm that was 3 years long, so he's been getting it for 3 years as a smoldering patient. However, he's gone into active status, so that ended his daratumumab trial as a smoldering patient. So went through that. About a year or so later, in June of 2017, my doctor said, look, you got a lesion on your spine, and we don't know when that's going to collapse, and you're not going to like it. It's going to change your life dramatically if that happens. And so that convinced me to start treatment. I went through the typical VRD, induction therapy, did a stem cell transplant. Yeah, as Robin said, it's not pleasant, but it's no worse than having the flu, put it that way. 13 days it took. I literally exercised on the treadmill and worked out every day, except for what they call the nadir, one day when the cell count is the lowest it could possibly be. I walked out in 13 days. I walked out with my backpack and just walked out of the hospital. Went home and made dinner and lived a normal life. So fast forward again, 3 years of Revlimid as a maintenance program. I've been pushing to get off the Revlimid. I then had an MRD test. That's Adaptive Biotechnologies, one of our sponsors today. They ran a test called a clonoSEQ. The result came back and it said 0 myeloma cells detected. So time to stop treatment. 48 days ago, I stopped Revlimid. I'm on no treatment, and I don't anticipate ever going back on treatment. My expectation is that I will never see myeloma again. And I believe that. So here's some pieces of advice that I could give you all, and hopefully this will help you think it through. Obviously, again, find a myeloma specialist. That's really important. I found at one point in this whole process, and it was pretty early in the process, I changed my mindset. I just said to myself, why am I torturing myself, worrying and having anxiety over this? It's going to be what it's going to be, and just live each day and enjoy it. And that was just a shift for me. It was a real change in paradigm that brought me to have a totally different attitude toward it. Another thing I think is important is to give yourself a break in the day. I found that people and patients that that are part of my coaching group have said the same thing. Give a time of day, like 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock at night. Say, that's my cutoff. I'm not going to read about, talk about, or listen to, or anything to do with myeloma. If you want to research it, do it early in the day. But don't do it before you go to bed. Believe me, it'll ruin your night. And I see a lot of heads shaking, yes. So give yourself a cutoff time. Take control of your treatment, as we talked about. Ask questions, advocate for yourself. Go to HealthTree University. You might see it on my hat here. HealthTreeUniversity.org. They have some wonderful videos of some very prominent doctors in the myeloma field who will help educate you on all the different topics and subjects based on your need and where you are today. And I think that's the other important thing. I found myself, when I was initially in this, I found myself reading way ahead of my situation. So for example, I was reading about relapse and refractory and what's going to happen to me down the road and so forth. And at times I would get anxieties over that. And I realized it made no sense, because this world that we're in is changing dramatically. There are new treatments coming out annually. Sometimes every few months there's something new, a new approach, taking an existing treatment and using it differently and so forth. And so to think 2 years down the road doesn't make sense, because everything will be different by then. So back yourself up and just look at what's important to you today. the HealthTree people have wonderful webinars and so forth. But again, I don't sign up for those that are not relevant to me because there's just a lot of information that I can never use and ultimately may never use because things are going to change in the next 6 or 12 months. So keep yourself in the current environment of what is going on with you and what's important for you to know to take care of yourself the best you can. That's my myeloma survivalist approach. And so far it's worked. So I thank you all for listening to my long story. And I look forward to hearing from Sherry. And Sherry is going to talk next about her situation and what she's been through.
Okay. I noticed when in the intro that Audrey did, and sorry for my voice, I have a cold. It's called weather going from 88 to 50. So anyways, I noticed in my picture, I should update it because I have COVID hair now, you know, when you don't go get your hair cut for a year, except I keep trimming my own bangs. Anyways, yeah, so I'm kind of the long hauler here between Jim and Robin and myself. It's been 9.5 years. October will be 10 years for me. And when I was first diagnosed, probably between the myeloma and the kidney failure, my doctor said 3 to 5 years is probable. 7 years, if you're lucky, 10 years would be a home run. Well, I'm getting ready to hit that home run. And we found my myeloma. I had no symptoms, felt fine, had some routine blood work that showed my kidneys were failing. The doctor called me and said, your kidneys are failing. I need you to go to the emergency room right now, because they were only at 8%. And he says, I want you to go to the emergency room right now, have it checked again. I thought for sure it would be a mistake in the blood work, that it was somebody else and not me, but it was me. That was on a Friday. Didn't know what was causing it. Was in the hospital for 3 days, 4 days, I guess. Had a kidney biopsy, and then my nephrologist called and said, can you meet me tonight at my office? Well, my husband and I knew that wasn't good if he wants to meet after hours. And he told me that I had light chain deposition disease, which is very similar to myeloma. I mean, and really, I have both, I guess. It's not curable, but it's treated like cancer. And referred me to an oncologist who I met that Friday. So 1 week later, I'm meeting an oncologist who says, pretty sure you have multiple myeloma. Did a bone marrow biopsy right then and there in his office. And I think we got the results about a week to 10 days later that I did have multiple myeloma. So between October 7th of 2011 and October 31st of 2011, I was diagnosed with cancer, told my kidneys were failing, had a peritoneal dialysis catheter inserted in my belly, and started dialysis and chemo. It was a fast 2 weeks. And then anyways, I then had my stem cell transplant in March of 2012, still on dialysis. I was on dialysis for 2 years. After my stem cell transplant, I decided not to do any maintenance chemotherapy because the only choice offered to me at the time was Revlimid. My induction therapy was only Velcade because Revlimid can be hard on your kidneys. And I don't think a lot, at least at my clinic, which is not a research center, we don't have any myeloma specialists. I'm not sure if anybody was even doing combination therapies with Revlimid, Velcade, and Dex, but I did Velcade and Dex for 2 months, had the stem cell transplant. I was in a very good partial remission after the transplant. And because Revlimid can be hard on your kidneys, my husband and I talked about it with our doctor and decided not to do maintenance therapy. I was able to stay drug-free for 2 years from my transplant, but my numbers started to climb. And in April of 2014, I needed to start treatment again. And I asked my doctor, why can't I try Velcade again? Because I only did Velcade for 2 months. It's not, by now I know a little bit more than I knew then. I knew that I wasn't refractory to it. I knew that it hadn't caused me neuropathy or any side effects. And he looked into it and he said, yeah, we can do that. We can get Velcade approved for you as your maintenance. So then I started Velcade 3 weeks and Dex, 3 weeks on, 1 week off. And I did that for 6 years. And then my number started to climb again last year. And by now I have seen a specialist, kind of know where we're going to go next. And so in July, I had to change treatment. And I started on Darzalex Fast Pro, which is the subcutaneous version, Revlimid, which because I had never had Revlimid yet, and the dexamethasone, of course. And I've gotten really good results with that. We dropped my Revlimid from 10 milligrams to 5 milligrams because it was really knocking down my blood counts. I've had no reactions whatsoever to the Darzalex Fast Pro, no allergic reaction. I have weaned myself off of the Dex. And finally, last month, I got my lab report that said no evidence of myeloma. They couldn't find anything. And again, this isn't with the MRD testing, but this is, in the blood work. So that's the first time that's happened in 9.5 years, and I hope that continues for me. I was able to go off of dialysis after 2 years, just really lucky in that regard, because when I was diagnosed, my kidney doctor said, you're going to be on dialysis the rest of your life. In fact, he was more worried that I would die from side effects of the kidneys than I would from the myeloma, because you're at higher risk for stroke and heart attack. So, so far I proved them all wrong. So that's kind of what I wish I had known and what I'm glad I knew. What I'm glad I knew after, sadly, having to advocate quite a bit for my mother-in-law when she was in the hospital before she passed away, I kind of learned what it was like to deal with the doctors, ask questions, ask and ask and ask. And I learned that during that time. And so when I was told, here's the averages, and you're always going to be on dialysis, I was determined to prove them wrong. And I said to them, those are just averages. I'm not average. I mean, for those statistics, there's somebody up here, there's somebody down here, and somebody in the middle. And I was determined I was going to be the person up here in the stats. And so far, that's happening. So I was glad that I knew that, and that I took that mindset that I was going to stay positive and that I was going to show them, prove them wrong. What I wish I had known from the beginning, especially living in Boise, where we are not near hospitals and research facilities where Huntsman is down in Utah, so we're not far from there, but I didn't know any of that when I first started. But the importance of seeing a specialist, I wish I had known that in the beginning. It was 3 years before I sought the advice of a specialist. Would it have changed my treatment? Very possibly. She probably would have, because she told me that Revlimid, when it's dosed properly, can be given to kidney patients, kidney failure patients on dialysis. So at the time, everything we were reading was like, oh, it's just really bad for you with your kidney failure. So maybe I would have done Revlimid maintenance. Maybe I would have gone longer before I relapsed those 2 years later. But, it was 2 years being drug-free, which was nice. I don't know if I anticipate that happening again. But those are the things that I think hopefully you take away from this. You have to advocate for yourself. And it's so important to get the advice of a specialist, to work with your local oncologist right from the very beginning. So that's my story. I'll turn it back to Audrey.
Sherry, that was awesome. Thank you to Rob and Jim and Sherry. When we were preparing for this, I just was so grateful that we had chosen them to speak, because I feel like they each bring a great story to the table and a lot of hope, which is what we wanted to kind of instill in the group today as we talk about becoming our own, becoming more educated and empowered as a myeloma community. So we are going to share a slide just to show you how this group discussion is going to work. So for those who are unfamiliar with Google Meet, what's going to happen is you're welcome to ask questions in the chat up here. There's actually a way to ask questions if you click on this activities, which I see some people have done already. That's not necessary. We'll answer your questions, of course, if you ask them there. But for those who are on iPads and phones, it's sometimes harder to access it that way. So you're welcome to just ask your questions in the chat. Or ideally, we would love to hear from you out loud. So if you want to click this raise hand button, it's near the bottom of your screen, whether you're on a laptop or a desk or a phone. If you look at the bottom of your screen on the phone, you would tap it. That's the raise hand button. So if you want to click raise hand, then you're able to, we'll call on you and you can unmute yourself. Let's start with a couple questions that I saw. One of them, let me see who asked it because I want to make sure that I'm answering the right person. It was Bob. So Bob said that he was recently diagnosed with smoldering in December of 2020. He sees a top myeloma specialist at a cancer hospital in New Jersey, and he is monitoring closely, and he sees him every 3 months. I'm not on any treatment now. My doc is nationally renowned. Do I need a second opinion? I think this is a great question, Bob, because in the end, it comes to what are your goals as a myeloma patient? What are your goals as a smoldering myeloma patient? Do you want to be part of clinical trials? Are you high risk? Do you want to be on treatment? Do you feel confident in your doctor? I think you have done yourself a great service by starting already with a specialist. In my personal opinion, I don't think you would need to seek a doctor elsewhere just for meeting the criteria of getting that second opinion. It would only be if your goals are more than your doctor is currently giving you. We especially recommend specialists for those who are seeing a local hematologist or oncologist because we want people who are involved in myeloma research and in the updates to be in contact with you about your disease. So hopefully that explains it a little bit more. Robin, go ahead and add whatever you'd like to.
Yeah, I'd just like to add that a lot of people are uncomfortable seeking a second opinion. They don't want to offend their doctor, or they feel like they're sneaking or something. And that's not the case. Professional doctors have this all the time. If they were told that they had this life-threatening disease, they would certainly seek a second opinion. If your doctor takes offense, it's probably good reason to find a different doctor. It's just routine, and this is life and death. So you owe it to yourself, to do that. And
yeah,
unless you're sharing testing, which you should do instead of going through it a second time, you wouldn't even need to tell them, or face them and say, I'm going to get a second opinion. You just ask the staff to send your records to the second person that you're going to see. So don't be worried about offending your doctor. This is your life.
Yeah, thank you for that, Robin.
Secondly, I would add to that, Audrey, you said something important there. Whether or not you're high risk, Bob, if you're not high risk, your standard risk, probably less need right now to do anything other than keep working with who you're with. But if you're high risk, I would think it'd be important to talk to someone else and or press for some treatment under one of the drug trials.
Yeah.
Because there are drug trials right now for smoldering people that are high risk.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Okay.
All right. We have a couple people raising hands. So Mary Pearson, if you want to unmute and talk to the group. I saw her earlier, but I don't see her now. All right, Mary, we'll move on to Gina Murphy, if you want to unmute yourself and talk to the group, and then we'll come back to Mary.
Sorry, actually, I wasn't aware that I'd raised my hand, but I do have a quick question for Robin, just in relation to, she remarked how she was on Velcade, which I'm currently on as part of my maintenance therapy. And she mentioned the importance of taking vitamin C with that. So I hadn't heard about that. So could you maybe elaborate a little bit on that, please?
I'm glad you asked for that clarification. You're not supposed to take vitamin C with
Oh, you're
Velcade.
not. Okay.
Yeah. And so, generally you think, oh, good, eat a lot of citrus, vitamin C, it's, no harm, no foul, but that's not the case when you're on Velcade. And I wish someone had told me that, because I had been taking vitamin C.
Oh, sorry, I misunderstood you. Thank you.
No, I'm glad you asked.
Thank you.
Great, thank you, Gina. Let's talk about then, and anybody's welcome to raise their hand if they have a different question, but I was just wanting to ask a question in general to the group is, what do you find the hardest about being an empowered patient? What obstacles are in your way, or what are the challenges that keep you from being that educated, empowered patient that you want to be? Does anyone have any thoughts on that?
Audrey, I think similar to what Jim was saying, or Robin, whichever, about don't feel bad about getting a second opinion. It's kind of the same thing. I think that most of us, no matter our age, are kind of brought up with that doctors are God, thought. And so what they tell you, you take and you just do and follow, and you don't question it. But they are people too, and they don't know everything. Like my particular doctor is a hematologist oncologist. He only sees, a smaller number of myeloma patients. Since I was diagnosed, so the past 9.5 years, there's been a lot more myeloma patients diagnosed, and they brought in quite a few more doctors who, if I were diagnosed today, I would be referred to one of those as the myeloma guys. But I love the rapport that I have with my doctor, and I also have a specialist in my back pocket that I consult with, yearly or more if I need to. I can travel to see him because he's in Arizona, or with COVID, the telehealth thing is like, that's the way to go right now. You can consult with a doctor without having to travel and without having to spend, that kind of money. Even if he's out of network, it's still cheaper than flying to go see somebody somewhere. But that's why I stick with my doctor, because we have a great rapport, and he was never insulted. But I did have that uncomfortable feeling the first time that I said to him 3 years into this that we're going to go see a doctor at Duke University and see, what they say. And it was uncomfortable at first, but now it's not a problem. So I really encourage everybody to remember that your doctor is human, and like I think Robin or Jim had said, they would do the same thing if they were in our shoes. They would seek a specialist in our particular disease.
Right. Awesome. Thank you, Sherry. We have a couple hands raised. Susan, if you want to speak, if you want to unmute yourself and speak.
Well, in answer to your question, Audrey, sometimes the doctors themselves have the view that they are gods.
Right.
And some of us come to the situation not thinking doctors are gods. And I think there can be communication problems resulting from that, and a dearth of information coming from the doctor in answer to questions that you as the patient have. And I think that situation can be exacerbated by the fact that in some of these institutions, wonderful as they are, perhaps partly because of COVID, there's so much short staff now.
Right.
And it can be very difficult to get access to directly to the doctor. A lot of the questions that you have go through somebody else. They're screened. You may get answers from someone who is not your doctor. And I found you just have to keep trying to work the system. And in my case, it resulted in my actually changing from one specialist to another, because the first specialist was so sparing, let's call it, in the information that he was providing to me. It was very frustrating.
Yeah, that is frustrating. So what was the process like for switching doctors? Because I get a lot of people asking, you know, like what's the practicality of that?
Well, in the end, the option was presented to me. I think I was being pushy enough and expressing my frustration enough that I was offered the opportunity to change doctors, and I wasn't being forced to change doctors. It was given to me as a choice, and I decided that's what I would do. And I chose someone at the same institution, but somebody younger, somebody with you know, not the hundreds of myeloma patients that the first person has. And so far, I've just started building this new relationship. So far, it seems to be going well. So
good. Yeah, good for you, Susan. Good for you for fighting for yourself and getting that you needed. So now we have another Susan White, that's raised their hand. If you want to unmute and talk to the group.
Yes, I wanted to ask Jim a question. He said that he was off Revlimid, but he said he was taking something else, if I understood that correctly, and it was Chlora something.
Well, one of the side effects, Revlimid messes with the GI system, right? Everybody knows that now. And you either have one problem or the other, two extremes, nothing in the middle. And so chlorestamine is one of the go-tos that all the nurses and several doctors have told me when you have diarrhea. And so that's what I was taking with Revlimid. When I stopped the Revlimid, I stopped the chlorestamine, and I might not be saying that word exactly right, but I stopped the chlorestamine. I'm still dealing with the issue. It hasn't gone away. It's been 48 days. It's very consistent. I know what's going to happen. I time around it, but, but it's still there, and I'm hoping it'll go away soon.
I hope so too. That is one of the worst side effects.
As long as we're on that topic of Revlimid side effects.
Right.
I had another weird one. I'll be really brief. I had another weird one. I thought a little strange, but Revlimid lowered my blood pressure. And when I went off of it, my blood pressure jumped up about 10 or 15 points above where it had been for 3 years. So now I'm on lisinopril, just a half a milligram. 2.5 milligrams. It's a very small dose, and it has made all the difference. It brought my blood pressure back down. I'm in the 120s over 70, so it's a very healthy level. But it had jumped into the 130s after I stopped Revlimid.
Yeah, I'm 92 over 60. Everyone panics when they take my blood pressure.
Oh,
don't worry about it. I'm good. Okay. So, chlorestamine, is that a prescription drug or over the counter?
Yes. It's prescription, and it's a powder that you mix with a liquid. It doesn't dissolve in the liquid. It's kind of like drinking muddy water. It's the best comparison. It's real gritty, and you drink it with whatever you want to mix it with. I didn't try it in beer yet, but it works great in water.
Well, the other question I wanted to ask anyone that has spoken, did you lose your taste buds and your sense of smell?
My wife said I smell just as bad as I used to, so I don't know about that. But the taste, my taste got hyper. Everything tasted really salty and really sweet. Mine was extra hyper. I didn't lose the sense of smell at all.
Did anyone else?
I'm sorry, pardon me.
Say that again, Susan. We didn't hear you.
I know Sherry was about to say something. I didn't know if anyone else had lost their taste and smell.
I did not.
Yeah, I didn't either. Right after the stem cell transplant, my things that I wanted to eat kind of changed. Funny thing was, I used to eat, like as far as chocolate, I loved M&Ms and what you would call low-end chocolate. And then after my stem cell transplant, I had a very refined palate. Now only diet chocolate, tasted good. That's kind of gone back to normal over the years.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, just to jump in, Audrey, you asked about, obstacles to people feeling, like being advocates or being educated. And I think the biggest one for me was just being overwhelmed. There are 12 subtypes of multiple myeloma. There's high risk, there's genetic, there's all these different meds now. It's very complex and complicated. And of course, there's differences in each of us,
Right.
Besides that, other comorbidities, whether it's high blood pressure, kidney failure, diabetes, or whatever. So you learn this quickly in a support group setting that, what the person next to you is on in their maintenance treatment can be far different than yours. And it doesn't mean one's right or wrong. Part of it's an art, part of it's science, but we all have different makeups. This is a complex disease. It's not like one thing. And so it's overwhelming to understand the complexities and getting into all the biology for those of us who are not science-based or biology-based in terms of our education and work. And you just have to put your nose to the grindstone to get it. And sometimes you have to hear things several times to understand what's going on. But I think the complexity of it makes it overwhelming initially, and you'll get past that.
I agree. And that's why we're here that's literally my job, is to make it easier for all of you.
Hey,
So,
Audrey, I saw Gina put her hand up again a little bit ago.
Okay, we have several people, so I'm going to try to get to all of them.
Okay.
But thank you, Jim. Yeah, I'll make sure that everyone has a chance before we end. We have a comment from Ben. He said he was diagnosed with MGUS 3 years ago with an M spike of 1.7 and 5% plasma cells in bone marrow. Also had 3 to 4 focal spinal lesions, but we decided to just follow the labs and spinal MRI. Just had a repeat MRI with 2 new spinal lesions, but these are not lytic lesions. Does anyone, and I'm going to direct this towards Patty and Arturo, who are our medical professionals here today, do you know the natural history of these lesions and if they will inevitably become lytic lesions? He's meeting with his oncologist next week, and he's talking about starting him on treatment for multiple myeloma.
Of course. Hi, Ben. In MGUS, it depends if the disease progresses to multiple myeloma. The progression of these focal lesions might stop or might progress to lytic lesions in 18 to 24 months if the disease is active. Sometimes this progression might be slower, or it might accelerate depending on the progression of the disease. So it depends on your case, so we can help you validating your profile to give you a better explanation of this problem.
Great. Patty, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I also wanted to add on the validation comment that if you sign your consent and we ask for your medical records, we could give it a priority to you because you're seeing your oncologist this week. So we could try to prioritize and do it as soon as possible. All the records that we receive, or if you have the information at hand, if you have the documents or maybe a patient portal, we could help you read, interpret, and understand all the lab values that you have. Especially if you are starting treatment, we would like to see, and of course, you would like also to do it, to keep track of all your lab values, your genetic test results as the disease unfolds. So this is a free service, as you all know, and if you would like us to help you with that, just contact us back at support@healthtree.org to help you interpret that information, enter it into your HealthTree Care Hub account, and we can also schedule a call with you so that if you have any questions about your results, we can clarify them or let you know what would be good questions to ask your doctor in your following appointment.
Thank you, Patty. Thank you, Arturo. And that doesn't just apply to Ben, although it does apply to Ben that they're there to help. It applies to each of you. We created HealthTree Cure Hub to make your myeloma journey easier. So if you want a place to put all of your lab records and tests and things like that, or if you have questions about your lab results, or 1,000 other things that we can help you with on this myeloma journey, I will include those resources about how to contact us and how to create that profile. And again, if you have an upcoming appointment, such as Ben, we can make your records a priority and get in contact with you as soon as possible. So I'll make sure to include that information in our follow-up email. We also had Hannah raise her hand. So Hannah, it's great to see you. It's been a long time.
I know. I tell you, guys, that I was overwhelmed with what was going on with my treatment, and several of you who has already long time experience with myeloma, they mention all of them somehow that you can't look at the statistic exactly, because there are studies and they are good studies. And based on the studies, the medicine, the new medicine is approved, and they have an idea how the things works. And we don't have access to those that there are on the left or on the side, on the right side. So this is good marker for sure, but you need to just learn as much as you can about your disease and ask those questions. And what I wanted to tell you, the new people, that everybody is saying that having, I mean everybody, people who know, who are in business, that having myeloma specialists on your side is very, very important, because those guys are so experienced when they see many of those patients that if something goes out of hand, they know exactly how to help you, instead like going through the studies and try to find out. So what happened with me, I was away from United States. I have this accent. I finally, with the COVID, I could fly to Poland and see my mother, who was 92 and very delicate stage. But my primary doctor already in my Jim Lubinsky, here are you, in the checkup, he found out that my hemoglobin is a little bit off and I have some proteins. So he ordered the second checkup and, more specialized. And he told me I need to go to cancer specialist. But then I had opportunity to go to Poland, and I asked him, do you think that I can go? And he said, look, COVID and flights, you can't go. But if you find specialists in Poland that they can at least find out what you have, so I let you go. So I went, and they find out that I have myeloma, and it wasn't smoldering. It was already like international third stage, and I don't have any genetic changes, so I'm good there. But my family started to freak out, and they said, no, you can't be there. We are here. We need to bring you to United States. So here I am. I moved closer to the specialized place where they treat myeloma, and they make my first appointment not with myeloma specialist, because they wanted like right away. They were thinking that I'm old, I have cancer, and I need to be treated 1 week before the myeloma specialist, because otherwise I'm going to die in 6 months. So in the beginning, this doctor, is not myeloma specialist, but he's good doctor. And he does some research. He's good doctor for the middle thing. So he prescribed me Revlimid, Velcade, and dexamethasone. And he already slotted me for autologous stem cells transplant, which I was like, oh, I have got by his feet because many people don't have this opportunity. So I was very happy. And so then, then came time for this set up appointment for ASCT. And I start to see that my numbers are getting much better. So I was already in CR, that means complete response. And I was looking around that in another cancer clinics, they don't do outpatient stem cells things because COVID. So I was thinking, well, with this good results, maybe I can, I can wait. But they jump on my schedule. They start to move the things without like asking me if even is convenient for me, because it was like the best way. So, and also, I don't know how you guys share a gym. What you can say about your team with your oncologist, because there is no team really who supports this doctor. He is new in the setting because he moved from another city, and then his nurse is new, looks like, that she came also in July when I started in August with them. So there is a lot of things that they are not getting through. And I feel so bad because I feel like I'm not complainer. I'm not. I'm just asking questions, and I just don't understand what's going on and what is the strategy and what are the other options. So I was thinking, okay, I have this guy that I really would like to have him like myeloma specialist in the cancer clinic that I attend. He is in myeloma working group. He became the doctor because before he was researcher, and he decided that he can help people clinically with his knowledge and kind of do translational medicine, and he does this excellent. But before I even talk to my doctor about switching, which I feel so guilty. I feel that I'm trying to, I have anxieties because that. So I wanted to know if he takes me, this myeloma specialist. So first I wrote to him directly to his email, because I find out that whomever I write in the portal is getting through the nurse of my doctor, and sometimes even my doctor doesn't get my messages because she decides what needs to be done, which I really don't like. And and her responses are very like brief, like dexamethasone does it to you. Girl, I was telling you that when I start to take Zometa, I had like really, really bad reaction, and I find out, searching through the literature, that is very rare, but Mayo Clinic had the cases. So I needed to advocate for myself, because otherwise it would go like that. So they changed Zometa for Xgeva, and it works good for me. So I'm telling long story, but this myeloma specialist wrote to me, I think that in this time, you are good with your doctor, because we can talk about it when we are together. And I think that I want to talk between two doctors. So this, I know Dr. Arturo Hurtado is like trying to understand what I'm saying. And I moved specially closer to the place where I am to attend this good, great place where they treat myeloma. They have myeloma group specialists that there are several. And I just don't know how I can solve this, because in this moment, I still want to switch to myeloma specialist, because if my doctor would have good team, it would be
Yeah.
another thing, but I don't have this support. So I'm telling this, so new patients, when they start, or smoldering myeloma patients, that they start to be treated, to try right from the beginning to follow with myeloma specialist. That's all.
Yeah. No, thank you, Hannah. I appreciate it. And I know that you've been in this struggle for a couple months now. So again, Maria can help you as soon as we get off this call. Let's talk some more, because we want to be able to help, especially if the nurse isn't answering the questions in a way that you feel is appropriate or helpful. You, like Robin was saying earlier in this meeting, it's your life, Hannah. We're talking about your life here. We're not talking about which cupcake do you like better. We're talking about this is your life on the line, right? And we want you with all of you, not just Hannah, but we want all of you with doctors that you feel comfortable with, that you feel educated by, and that you feel empowered with. That's our goal. So thank you so much to everybody who contributed. There's been a lot of resources shared in the chat, so that's really exciting to be able to collaborate together. I'm going to end with a couple of announcements, but I really do appreciate your time and your participation here with us today. So let's finish up with this. Our next meeting will be June 17th, 2021, and we're going to continue this conversation of the importance of a multiple myeloma specialist, because it's so important, even for those that are already seeing a multiple myeloma specialist, how to maximize the benefits of having a multiple myeloma specialist. So Greg, who is the program head of the Myeloma Crowd Roundtables, if you guys aren't aware what those are, they are usually on Saturdays, and they're with 4 or 5 different myeloma experts who join together to talk about things and answer questions from patients. So he has direct access and really good friendships and connections with a lot of multiple myeloma specialists. And so he's going to come talk to us about studies and experiences that he has had to prove the importance of seeing a specialist. And then as I mentioned, how to maximize the benefits when you are seeing that multiple myeloma specialist, what you can do in order to make sure that you are getting the best treatment possible and not being afraid to do so. You may be interested in other myeloma crowd community events that we have coming up. Next week, we're going to be talking about selinexor. That is for relapse refractory, so that might not be very interesting to you as newly diagnosed. We are having a Connect with the Myeloma Crowd Roundtable to learn more about those Myeloma Roundtable programs on the Wednesday as well. Thursday is our African American myeloma chapter. Danielle is going to share her stem cell transplant experience with us. Friday is our nutrition and wellness for myeloma chapter, and we're going to have a radiologist from Cornell come to talk to us about imaging manifestations of common Western diseases. So basically, we know that eating healthy matters, but how does it literally affect your body? She's going to be showing us images and showing us how, in relation to myeloma, can we maximize health benefits for our body. Another thank you to our sponsors, AbbVie, Bristol Myers Squibb, Amgen Oncology, Genentech, Karyopharm Therapeutics, Oncopeptides, Adaptive Biotechnologies, and Takeda Oncology. And thank you to each of you for helping us grow this myeloma crowd community. I hope you have a great rest of your day. And again, I'm really thankful for your participation. So thank you so much. Have a great day.